So it is part of the mental health DSM mental health. It's as natural classified as a mental health disorder.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
It's classified as part of the cluster B, what they call cluster B disorders, mental health disorder. So it is a personality disorder. My ex had a clinical diagnosis, and that was because he was in the military and he had other stuff going on. Very rarely do people get a diagnosis. They're either in the prison system, they're either in the military or the police or something like that where it's been picked up. Most people don't, and because of the nature of the condition, they're not going to volunteer themselves to go and get a diagnosis. So yes, it is a clinical, it is a mental health issue. However, I just want to clarify, this is not the same as something like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or something where the person actually doesn't understand. You know, if they're in crisis, they may not necessarily have the capacity to know that their behavior is unregulated and that they shouldn't be doing that because of the disorder. With narcissistic personality disorder, they are very much well aware of their behavior, so they can choose, and that's what makes it different, even though it's still a personality disorder. And it's the fact that they can make choices, they can choose to regulate their behavior, and that's the difference. And oftentimes they don't, they'll just go with how they're feeling and they don't care. That's the difference. Anybody, it isn't peculiar to men or women. So any male or female can have narcissistic personality disorder. It's not specific to any particular sex at all. One of the questions, because I also have a podcast, and I interviewed a clinical psychotherapist. One of my questions to him was, particularly in the Black community here and I was talking more specifically about the UK, but I did wonder whether, narcissistic personality disorder was more prevalent in our communities as opposed to every other community. But he did say that the research shows that that's not the case. It's the same sort of percentage in it's pretty much level in each in the other communities as well. So there isn't anything that would suggest that there's a higher incidence of narcissism in the Black communities. Having said that, there are different things that come into play that might suggest it might look like it is. So here in the UK, there are a lot of issues, especially in the younger generation. This is one of the things that he did pick up on. And he shared that, remember I was saying earlier that in the Windrush generation, a lot of our parents, what happened was they would come to the UK to for a better life and leave children behind. They'd leave children behind. And the intention was maybe work for a couple of years, 5 years, and then go back home. That never happened. They were kind of stuck given the situation that they were in, and their children were left behind. So sometimes they were sending for children when they're all, 12, 13, they're in their early teens. So a lot of children were left, and there was this thing called a barrel children. So what happened was, and this was right across the board, it was a generational thing. Parents would have barrels, so they would put things in and send them back home to the children. And then eventually they would be able to send for the kids and they would come over to the UK. But they've been separated from their mum for however long, years. They were left when they were like 2. Now they're 12 and 13 and 14. There's no relationship, the attachment issues. And what he was saying in this podcast was that it wasn't so much about the narcissism, but the attachment issues our community, especially in the Caribbean community, have. And that has an effect on how we relate to one another as in relationships. So that was what he was saying, more than the fact that narcissism per se, personality narcissistic personality disorder was more prevalent. It was different. It was a different thing that was coming into play. Actually, there are some very, very strong similarities. You remember that the narcissist will have had a long time to hone their skills. Remember I said earlier that it was it's something that they've done for the longest time from children. Yeah. And it's something that they've honed over the years. So by the time they're adults, they're not necessarily conscious of the fact that they're doing it, but it's about control. So they learn early on what they need to do to be able to control the next person in order for them to get what they need. And and this is what makes it a disorder, because they all do the same thing. They all do the same thing. It is a disorder. I'm just going to pull up and see if I can just read you the definition of what that is. It's a disorder. It's a disorder. So that, just like you have bipolar, just like you have schizophrenia, there's going to be certain characteristics that identifies that as those disorders. And it is the same with NPD, or narcissistic personality disorder. So they have to have, there are criteria that they have to have. There's criteria that they have to have, and there's 9 things that you can identify, and they only have to have maybe 5 of those things that will give them a disorder. And I'd just like to read that to you, just for your listeners. So it's important that we understand this. Okay, so I want to talk about the 9. I mentioned earlier that there's 9 traits. I don't want to miss anything. That's why I need to sort of show you this. So one of them is grandiosity. So they will have this grandiose thing about themselves. Remember, initially I said, most people, when they think of narcissism, they think of, the whole overt thing, I am the greatest and all of that. And they will demonstrate that. There's this excessive need for admiration. One of the signs with my ex, he loved to do things that would make people admire him. So he would always buy me gifts. He would be very helpful for other people, and everybody else would think he's amazing. And so they crave this admiration, the admiration from others. Okay. They lack empathy. I mentioned that earlier. They don't have the empathy. They just don't have it. Like I said to you before, they lock it off at a very, very early age. And that's what makes it so hard for them to be able to form lasting relationships. They just cannot do that. They don't have the empathy. They will look at you crying and don't understand why you're crying. They just can't connect with you on that level. You will sit and have a conversation with these people, and you can pour out your deepest thoughts, your deepest, the stuff that you have in here that means so much to you, and you will share that with them. It means nothing to them. They cannot connect on that level. They just cannot do it. They can't do it. They have, let's have a look. Let me see what else. So there's 9. So they feel this exaggerated sense of self-importance. They will feel superior to others, and that they deserve special treatment. Okay. They will have fantasies, of unlimited success. All of this, they think they're amazing. They will actually do that. They'll think they're the most handsome person or the most beautiful woman. Handsomest man, most beautiful woman. No, there is nobody like them. They're actually they think they're actually gods. They might not actually say, I am God, but they behave actually in that way, and you're expected to worship them. I know that sounds a bit weird, but that's how they come. They must be the center of attention. They will often monopolize a conversation. Not all of them do, because you have different types of narcissism, or narcissist, should I say. So you'll have the overt one. You'll have, the one that I've just explained, that they're all, very grandiose and all of that. You'll have the victim narcissist. So they're the ones that will give you a sob story and tell you how awful their ex treated them, and you're going to feel really sorry for them, and they would pull you in that way. Then you'll have the somatic narcissist, the ones that are always preening and looking in the mirror, and and, will wear the designer this and the designer that. And, so their image is very, very important to them, so they have different types of narcissists. You also have different schools of narcissists. So you'll have, I forget the terminology, the lower, the mid-range and the greater narcissist. Now, the lower narcissist is the one that can get violent. They don't necessarily know what they are, and are very kind of base. So it's those people that, lose a temper really quickly and all of that. And you see a lot of domestic violence. Not everybody who is a perpetrator of domestic violence is a narcissist, so we need to be clear about that. They're very toxic, but they're not necessarily narcissists. But all narcissists are abusers. So I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so then you have the mid-range person. So they're not the ones that are going to be mid-range narcissists, have a bit more control. They're not likely to lash out and all of that, but they're much more able to manipulate. They're much more likely to manipulate people, and will be probably the more victim type, where there'll be a lot of the crying and all of that. And then you have the greater narcissist, who actually does know exactly who they are and what they're doing. They know who they are and will tell you. My ex, he didn't know. The second time around, he knew he told me that he had a clinical diagnosis, and I didn't get it. And I'm a health professional. I did not get it. And what he was doing was testing me to see what I knew. And I didn't understand. And he had a field day with me. A field day, because I didn't get it. And now what could I say? Because he said, well, you knew my diagnosis, you knew what it was, so you still stayed, so you deserve everything you get. These people are very, very, very dangerous, very dangerous.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi 14. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.